Welcome back to Her Rules Radio. This is Alexandra Jameson, your hostess, your life, health, and success mentor. Here at Her Rules Radio, I love bringing you conversations with incredible women and a few cool dudes too about topics that impact your ability to feel fully satisfied, successful, alive, and well in your life. And one of the topics that has come up many times in my conversations with dear close friends is around fertility. You know, as women, we're not just here to, make things with our hands or build things like our businesses, but we're here as mothers or wannabe mamas and papas. I'm sure there are some papas listening too. And last week, I met an incredible woman who I have heard about for years. I've actually read one of her books. We met at an event, and I immediately said, Andrea, will you be on my podcast? We have to talk about what you're doing. So Andrea Syrtash is a relationship expert and a journalist. She's also the founder of Pregnantish.com. This is the first media site exclusively dedicated to helping singles and couples and LGBTQ humans to navigate fertility treatments and infertility. Now, you've probably seen her on TV. She's been on Oprah's Own and Fox. She's on TV and radio all the time. She's written books. He's just not your type, and that's a good thing. Cheat on your husband with your husband. So she's been talking about how to improve relationships for years. And now she, because of her own long, tough journey, she's committed to breaking the taboo of infertility and elevating the conversation about what it takes to start a family for millions of people today. I found this conversation and her work so interesting, and some of it's very controversial. Andrea is going to tell us her story of 18 fertility treatments over the course of 8 years, and she finally met her baby through a surrogate. It was a really long and tough road. And, we've had Beth Ala, the documentary filmmaker, with her film Made in Boise about surrogacy in America Today. And I thought it was interesting to follow up with this conversation with Andrea because so many of my listeners are moms or women who want to be moms. And there's a lot of myths, misconceptions. That's a fertility joke, misconception. And there's a lot of stigma around different types of fertility treatments, infertility, etc. And because it affects so many women, I wanted us to have a really meaningful and detailed conversation about what the issues are, what the options are, how we can support our friends or family who are going through infertility treatments. I learned something really important in this conversation. We're going to talk about what it took for Andrea to continue to be a professional creative and an on-air personality while behind the scenes, she was dealing with a really intense physical and emotional process for years. The judgments that people who are going through infertility treatments face, the unwelcome advice, how to handle it, and also what's going on legally in the United States of America these days. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And if you have a friend or family member who's going through infertility now, share the show with them. Just copy the link out of iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you find this and send it off to them. But for now, here I am speaking with Andrea Syrtash from Pregnantish.com. Hey, it's spring 2020, and you may be ready to really dive in and focus on your creativity, your professional or personal growth. Well, I am offering 3 different retreats, a 1-day in New York City, a virtual retreat, and a 3-day retreat in Las Vegas this spring 2020. Want more information? Go to bit.ly/spring events 2020. That's bit.ly/spring events 2020. give me a couple of your details. I'll send you the info about these amazing, beautiful, powerful, super fun and clarifying retreats that are coming up real soon. Andrea, thanks so much for being here on Her Rules Radio.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so we were able to meet up in person just a week ago. Yeah, it was just last week.
So funny. Yeah.
And we were in this incredible group of women who were all sharing their stories of when they first felt like a leader, which I thought was such a fascinating conversation. And you've been known as a certain kind of leader, and now you're kind of building a new kind of leadership. You're building a space for people to come and get support and info and inspo around infertility.
That's right.
So before we get into your very personal relationship with this topic, I wonder, what was your life and work like before this infertility became your mission?
Well, my life and work since I graduated has been just as a journalist. And I specifically, one of the early books I worked on was called How to Survive Dating. And it was around, I think, 2004 or 5. That was my first paid assignment as a journalist. And I suddenly became branded as a dating and relationship expert on the radio when I was promoting the book. And then that title stuck, and I got more and more gigs and more writing assignments in that category. And then after so many years of reporting on relationship trends and writing dating advice, I became a nationally known relationship expert and author. So I've been in the media for a number of years, sharing relationship advice, helping people navigate many different kinds of relationships. I've written about in-law relationships and office relationships, but my books are primarily about romantic relationships. So whether that be dating or marriage, I've written about both. I wrote a book called Cheat on Your Husband with Your Husband. I wrote a book called It's Okay to Sleep with Him on the First Date and Every Rule of Dating Debunked. So, and he's just not your type, and that's a good thing. So you get the point of kind of my titles. I challenge conventional wisdom, I think, with common sense in a lot of my books. And I was really happily going along as a TV personality and author, sharing relationship advice, and it's something I'm very passionate about. But while I was on TV and on book tours, I was secretly going through a struggle trying to get and stay pregnant.
Yeah, and that, I mean, as we were chatting and as you were sharing your story, it was like, oh my gosh, you went through so much behind the scenes, and I want to go into that, but I wanted to back up real quick to talk. So you went to school for what? Were you a journalism major?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. I went to school for broadcast journalism. And I just really, that was a post-grad degree, but I just really always loved reporting on trends. I've been a nonfiction writer for years. And I really think that infertility, and not just infertility, people building their families with reproductive medicine. So, some LGBT or single women might fall into that category where they're not infertile necessarily, but they may need to access IVF or IUI or surrogacy. This is just modern day relationships. And I felt like I've written about so many chapters of modern day relationships, and I felt like I was missing a big one, and that's this.
Yeah. And you have this new platform, this new incredible website called Pregnantish, which is so brilliant, pregnantish.com. And you have this great video right on the website, right on the homepage, where you say you felt like you were performing a one-woman show while keeping a life-changing secret. So take us through, you were navigating this very intense, very physical, and I'm guessing very emotional journey behind the scenes, while you were also a public figure on camera and being out there and, talking on camera. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was intense. And the reason I put that on Pregnantish as the homepage video, I faked it on national television is what it's called, is because I know that whether or not, a lot of people struggling behind the scenes to build their families or, get and stay pregnant, people who are struggling often feel they're performing a one woman or one man show, where it's isolating and they feel like they're at work and nobody really knows what's going on. And it so invades your life. I mean, it takes over every aspect of your life. It's emotionally and physically and financially and relationally and spiritually exhausting. It's really hits you on every level. And so I just felt like, well, a lot of the viewers who are going to see this video are also quote unquote faking it sometimes in public. And I know what that feels like. And for me, I did parenting segments sometimes because I'm a relationship expert and author. So the homepage video has me on Good Morning America talking to George Stephanopoulos about when one person in a couple wants kids and the other doesn't. And I did that appearance right after a miscarriage. And I just was constantly, I did another event in front of 300 women at Lord & Taylor department store in New York, and in partnership with Allure magazine and Movado. And it was this amazing event, and I'm all over Getty Images looking like I know I'm heartbroken in the shot because I just had a miscarriage. So I know the public face I put on camera, and I could see the sadness in my eyes in those appearances, but I don't know that anyone watching would have known that. And it was always just, I had to compartmentalize. I think anyone going through any life challenge, not just infertility, sometimes you do have to compartmentalize because you don't want to be crying all day at work or on the subway in New York, for instance. But I started, just bringing like oversized Jackie O glasses everywhere I went because sometimes you can't help it. I remember, I'll never forget one year because it took me, the short version is about 18 fertility treatments over almost 8 years. And I'm sure we'll talk about this before I met my baby, but I remember in one year I was on my knees. Like I was in a department store bawling because I had had another failed IVF cycle and I was so depleted. And a woman came up to me, like a Southern woman, because we're in Midtown Manhattan. She was clearly a tourist and said, "Do you want me to pray for you, honey?" And I said, "Sure."
Yes,
I was
please.
just like, do it.
I'll take it.
I'll take whatever you can give me. So you have those moments, and and I have a Band-Aid in every shot. When there's so many times I was on video and TV with a Band-Aid on my arm, which is like the uniform when you're going through fertility treatments because you get blood work drawn so much. So there's just all these pictures that are punctuated by my years of trying to create a family.
Oh my gosh. I can hardly even imagine. And the one piece of what you just shared that I'm like, I've been that lady on the subway who's just bursting into tears, and you're like, oh my God, please get to this station so I can get off and not cry in front of these people. And New Yorkers are like, they're just trying not to look at you. And yet most people are like kind of kind and compassionate.
Yes.
And they're also like, she could be crazy. I don't know.
Totally both true. Yes. You never know what you're going to get in New York. So that totally. Yeah.
Right. So this journey to parenthood, meeting your baby, as you say, was long and winding with cycle after cycle of treatments and surrogate searches. But the little that I know about your story, and when I say the little, it's like, it's only because I can never, walk this path in your shoes, but the steps that you took to become a mother aren't as uncommon as some of us might think.
That's right. Yeah. Infertility is a bit of a silent epidemic. It's starting to change where we hear more and more about it. I think people always assume it's the rich white career woman who waited too long to start her family. But at Pregnantish, and we've been around now almost 3 years, so we're new-ish, I guess. We have, our average reader is 33 years old. The average time that our audience has been trying, because we've done data on this, is 4 years. That doesn't necessarily correlate to 33 years old, but with a large pool of people, that's what we gathered. And we have African American patients following us. We have Indian and Southeast Asian. It's like, and men. We always think of it as a women's issue. It's pretty much divided down the middle as a female and male issue. Male factor infertility, some say, is around 35% of cases. And so it's just so misunderstood as a medical issue. And it's always blamed on a woman who waited too long because of her career. And no doubt those people exist, and that is a portion of who is served in reproductive medicine. So there's no doubt that that's a portion. That's certainly not the whole story. It certainly wasn't my story. And it wasn't millions of people's stories. So the CDC and the World Health Organization defines infertility as a disease. And part of my platform with storytelling, we're the first media site. So the first non-medical site to tell the storytelling around infertility and to elevate the patient's voice through high quality content. So we have video content, we have live events, we have articles. We're like any media site, just dedicated to this topic. LGBT, again, singles are served. It's not one face of fertility. That was so important to me because it's so misunderstood by people who haven't gone through it, although so many people know someone.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I can name a few close friends who've been down this road or are still on this road. Did you face any judgments from people or unwelcome advice as you were on this journey?
Yes. I think advice, well, again, any life challenge you're going through, advice isn't always what you want to hear. We pinned on Twitter on Pregnantish Mag is our Twitter handle, but we're Pregnantish everywhere else. So if anyone gets confused, we pinned this poster that says the best thing to say to someone struggling with infertility is ... to listen. That's actually for anyone who's struggling, or ask, how can I help, instead of offering advice. But the thing that's really crazy about this category for the people who are super fertile, like for our fertile friends, who didn't go through this, who don't have block tubes or sperm doesn't swim or any other medical block, they'll say, you know what it took for me? A trip to Hawaii. Like once you relax and you do a trip to Hawaii, you're going to get pregnant. And what's upsetting about that is you don't tell someone with arthritis or any other medical issue to relax and it'll go away. And as much as I believe in holistic living and healthy living and being in balance and stressing less, and I try to practice that in my life, it wasn't going to fix my uterus. I needed more than that. So
and telling me to relax always helps me relax.
Yeah, if you want to punch the person. But I mean, in general, like relax or think positively. People who don't think positively are the ones who told me that, which I always found really funny. Or, my best friend's mother's aunt's sister did this. That's what you should do. And so you'll hear every tale of how someone got pregnant, but every situation is different. And anything you've thought, what I always want to say to people, I know they're well-intentioned, so I never want to like bite someone's head off when they give people with infertility advice. But anything you've thought of, the person going through it has thought of a million times over. So why don't you just adopt? Just is a ridiculous thing to say with adoption. It's a very hard process, but anything you suggest is something, I guarantee, something someone with infertility has already visited.
Right.
So refrain from advice and instead just be a supportive ear, offer a hug, or say, how can I help? This must be really hard. Because I think, and this is where my relationship advice really plays into Pregnantish, I believe acknowledgement is the key to every healthy relationship that thrives. And that goes, and I did a whole TEDx talk about this a couple of years ago called How to Make Love Outside the Bedroom. But it's really about acknowledgement at work, acknowledgement in friendships, do you see here, value me, is what makes us tick in relationships. And I acknowledge your pain when anyone's going through anything painful. Just simply acknowledging it and seeing it is powerful. That's support.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned at work, and I suspect, but I could be wrong, I suspect that there's not a lot of support or dispensations for women who are working full time, outside of the home in a corporation, et cetera, like going through IVF or fertility treatments, that there's no like extra downtime. You don't get any like pass for this.
Yeah. Some companies are better than others in terms of benefits, even to access treatment because it's so expensive, or just HR being prepared to deal with people. Because when you're going through IVF, for instance, it can last, or egg freezing even, it can last a few weeks where you're being monitored often at a doctor's office. So you may be coming in late sometimes. And we've done a lot of advice on Pregnantish about this. These are just lifestyle issues that inevitably pop up that I felt like there wasn't any information for me when I was going through it on how to navigate this. I mean, I will say what existed before Pregnantish that still exists, that's amazing. There's great advocacy. Resolve.org is the National Infertility Association. They do incredible work to empower people and bring the advocacy for change, for the recognition that it's a disease. And they have good content, but it's not, Pregnantish is truly like, even our name is cheeky. It's the voice that I missed, because there were blogs before I created Pregnantish, but that's first person. There were verticals on parenting sites for infertility. But when you're going through infertility, that's sometimes the worst place to find your articles.
Oh, yeah.
Because think about it. Like, I don't want to go to a parenting site to find my sad section and wade through tons of baby pictures and moms, happy moms, and articles on moms to get to my section. It's like
having to walk through a bar to go to an AAB.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Oh my gosh.
And still when you have a miscarriage, sometimes you're, after DNC, you're like in a maternity ward. I mean, there's just so much that doesn't fit in terms of people's understanding of where infertility or pregnancy loss fits in to parenthood, like future parenthood. Right. So I just wanted this dedicated space that wasn't, I wasn't trying to reinvent. There were great medical sites, advocacy sites, blogs, but I wanted a curated media site. And that's what I felt was lacking.
Yeah.
And so we constantly publish articles on how to stay organized when you can't keep track of anything during the IVF cycle, how to tell your boss. We work with national experts on etiquette and organization. And, I quote others. It's not a site about me. So just for people who feel inevitably overwhelmed when they start this process or keep going through it. It's just constantly overwhelming.
So while you were navigating your way through your own treatments and this journey, how were you able to manage your self-care and your mental health while, not just being on this journey, but also being a full-time worker and public figure? How did you get through that?
I would be lying if I said I had like this great plan for that. I'd say, I don't even know. I was in survival mode in a way. I cannot believe how many shots I did in my body over 7 years of treatment. I can't even count. I mean, my drawers look like I was a full drug addict. And I did them on airplanes. And I did them in weird places. And I'll never forget, I was in a New York bar and my husband was doing my shot at a friend's birthday and women were banging on the door. And I said, I'm doing shots. And then I realized it sounded like I'm at a bar. Like that sounds, he said, not the fun kind. But it was just constantly like, how do you practice self-care through this craziness? I think in year 4, my husband helped me because he said, what you always say you love? Massages. Give yourself more, go for more massages during treatment because that just seems to help. And I never liked acupuncture. I did that for years. I don't know if it works or not. Some people feel it does, but for me, massages were way more relaxing. Mm-hmm. So in year 4 or 5, I was like, you know what? Every time I go through a cycle, I'm going to treat myself to that. I'm not going to stop living. I think when you first start going through fertility treatments, you don't take a certain trip. You don't buy a certain dress because you may be pregnant. That's why it's called Pregnantish, by the way. You're in this constant state of being a little bit pregnant. When an embryo is literally transferred into your body, you're in the first stage of pregnancy. So you are Pregnantish. It's a total myth that you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're hormonal. You're way hormonal and you are literally in the first stage of pregnancy. So you do all these things that you would do when you find out you're pregnant. Don't drink, don't do heavy cardio, take it easy, don't lift heavy objects. And it's a real mind trip because you put your life on hold in a way, and I've always told singles who are looking for a significant other or hoping to find one, don't put your life on hold. Drink that amazing bottle of wine. I'll never forget someone I interviewed for a book who had been saving an amazing bottle of wine given to her for the true love. And years went by. While we were speaking, she said, I'm going to invite girlfriends over for the new year and we're going to drink it and toast to the future because you get sick of living on pause. It's like whether you're single or trying to build a family or waiting for that certain job or clarity in your, whatever it is, living life on pause is so uncomfortable. And I always say, this is a terrible image, I apologize, but like sitting on the fence with the spokes up your butt is a lot less comfortable than jumping off. And even if the fall hurts, you're on one side and you'll dust yourself off and you'll make it work. But sitting there on the fence is so uncomfortable.
No, you can't think of anything else.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
exactly it. So
Yeah.
that's my long answer on self-care. I think it was a process, and I think I stopped living on pause.
No, that's a perfect answer. In my work and in my writing over the last, 19, 20 years with women, I think, and believe me, I fall into this thinking myself.
Mm-hmm.
What I see is true is that it's a dance. There's no one thing or one way of being or one way of eating that works forever. It's a constant evaluation process.
Totally agree. And I mean, that's the beauty of, hopefully, if you're someone who wants to grow and learn, that's a good thing. You know,
Yeah.
you're not just comfortable in one place. You're challenging yourself and you're learning and discovering what works, what doesn't work. And you're like, I think life is just curating, constantly tweaking. How can I align with my values more constantly? And
100%.
yeah. So when you're doing that, that's great. It's self-growth, and that's certainly a value of mine. I mean, strangely, I hate when people say things happen for a reason when you're going through a hard time, because it's not the advice you need to hear in that moment.
No.
At all. But I did secretly feel, even though I didn't really share it, that there was a bigger thing at play that I was learning from the whole time. And it's true.
That's different though.
Yeah, probably.
Saying this is happening for a reason is different from what can I learn from this?
Yeah. Well, and it's really your choice to learn from something difficult. So it's not, people say, oh, see, Pregnantish wouldn't have been created had you not gone through almost a decade trying to carry a baby. That's true. But some of us turn pain into purpose, whatever that's called, where we take our lessons and we bring them in a big way. And that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But that's not something everyone can do. And I would never blame someone for just wanting to put a tough chapter in a drawer and say, I want to close this. I'm done. I am CONE. Don't talk to me about this anymore. I get that.
Well, when I hear someone say everything happens for a reason, it's as if there is something happening to me. There's some, like a God or, life is doing something to you. It's very disempowering. Mm-hmm. Whereas what can I learn from this is really, what are my strengths? What are my values? What can I do taking back the power?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. And I think when you have so little power during a medical issue, it's really hard to feel out of control when you're going through anything medical. And, but what you can control, I guess is that, right?
Right.
But also I believe you can hold two emotions. I mean, humans can hold two emotions at once, and that's the beauty about being human. So in the same moment, I was angry and I was enlightened and learning. Both of those certainly coexisted.
Paradox.
Yeah.
That's the hashtag with this show, always.
Oh, good. Okay, so we speak the same language.
Yeah. So recently, actually, we had Beth Ala, the documentary filmmaker of Made in Boise. I think it was the episode 235. I don't know if you saw this film, but it's a documentary all about the surrogacy industry in Boise, Idaho. And it was such an interesting film, and it was really beautifully done. And she follows a few families, and there were, oh my gosh, I'm about to say there were some preconceptions. Preconceptions.
Yeah, so many puns in this category. So go on. Yeah,
that I had about surrogacy. I really was uninformed. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if there are any myths or attitudes that you wish you could dispel around any of this.
How long do you have?
Okay. As long as you want.
Okay. Well, I should tell you my long story shortish is that after many, many years of either failed IVFs or losing pregnancies and everything else, my doctor said to me, stop putting embryos in your body because I think you're miscarrying or failing at what looks like really good embryos. So you should genetically test your embryos. We have the technology today to see what's healthy, what's not. And that will help us. That will give us a window into if it's your uterine environment or the eggs or sperm. So in year 5 or 6, I lose track of time, but I genetically tested the embryos. We had healthy ones. And that's when my doctor said, okay, well, here's the good news. You have healthy ones. And once you have a healthy embryo with genetic testing, PGTA testing, it's called, used to be called PGS. Once you have a healthy embryo, you have a 60 to 80% chance of implantation and a live birth because we know it's genetically healthy. But the uterine environment has to be right. Now, in 2012, I had open stomach surgery to remove a fibroid tumor. At 14, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. We knew my uterus had all these issues. And my doctor said, listen, you've done this for so long that I really think if you're ever going to meet your baby, it's not with your body. And I think you need to find a gestational surrogate. And a gestational surrogate means it's not the surrogate's genetic baby. It's my embryo with my husband, my egg, my husband's sperm, carried by someone else. And I said, great. And he said, but you can't do it in New York. And I said, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's illegal. And I was like, full stop. What are you talking about? And this is where I started to become an advocate even around surrogacy. It is crazy to me that a progressive place like New York that thinks it's The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I don't know if you read The Handmaid's Tale or watched The Handmaid's Tale. But
I cannot watch the show. It's too. I read the book years ago. I'm like, that's enough for me.
Dystopian. But I grew up in Canada, so I learned about my infertility. I learned about The Handmaid's Tale, and I learned about Gloria Steinem around the same time, around 14 years old. And what's so weird is those 3 things intersect today as I prepare to go soon to Albany to lobby for gestational surrogacy to be legalized on February 11th. I'm going with Andy Cohen and a team of advocates. And basically, I just feel that it is so misunderstood. I'd like to hear from you what you think, but I know that Gloria Steinem thinks it's The Handmaid's Tale, that rich white older women are forced to carry, rich white women force other poor disenfranchised people to carry their babies. And then they rip the babies out of their arms, and that is surrogacy. And that could not be farther from the truth. And I won't explain all the nuances, but I'll explain some of them to illustrate why that's a ridiculous way to look at it.
Actually, that's what this documentary made in Boise totally transformed for me. Like, I really didn't know much about it. It just seemed weird and so foreign to me. But really watching, they followed a gay couple who are coming in actually from another country where it's illegal for them to have a surrogate child. And so Idaho has become a mecca, a center, and has very kind and compassionate rules about this. So you really are watching these families who are like, they just want to have a child. And it's not, and the women who are the surrogates, and I'm sorry, I feel like there's a different term. It's not just surrogates, but there's another term.
Well, it depends if it's traditional surrogacy or gestational surrogacy, but they're called gestational carriers or gestational surrogates. Yeah.
But they were lovely. They were so happy to do it.
Yeah.
They were like, this is a great way for me to support my family and give a gift to someone else that nobody else can. I was like, it was so touching. It was really touching. I know.
It's a really bizarre time because what's happening is, I've always said, especially when it comes to infertility or again, like this gay couple who can't build their family another way in their country. When someone fights so hard, or when people fight so hard to be parents, that's who I want to be parents. Like those are the children that I want in this world. And I never understand when that's blocked. But the thing with surrogacy that's so misunderstood, again, long story shortish, is that It took us 2 years to match with a carrier because it's so hard to find a carrier. It's like the organ donation. It's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Carriers need to be, I've heard fewer than 5% are actually accepted. So no one just becomes a surrogate. You have to be financially stable. You're medically screened. You're psychologically screened. If you have a partner, he's medically screened, or she. He would be, yeah. Medically screened, psychologically screened. Like the whole family is involved, and you are scrutinized. Like, it is not just that you walk in a surrogacy office and say, I want to do this. And I think that's the first part that's really misunderstood. It's extremely expensive, tens of thousands of dollars, whether it's altruistic, where someone's offering without charging like they have in Canada, or paid, which we're fighting for in New York. I do think people should have an option, if they're being so kind to be pregnant for a year, to be paid for that service. And it's their choice. These are adult women. Like, the most baffling part of Gloria Steinem's angry response to surrogacy, and by the way, if you Google it, you'll see that right wing conservatives are applauding Gloria Steinem for finally seeing the light about reproductive rights. It's bizarre.
Gosh.
It's like Twilight Zone.
I love Gloria except for this.
Well, I did, but I'm too close to this. I'm angry at her. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, she had literally blocked this from being passed in the past, and people are suffering. I'm traveling to Albany with a wonderful woman named Leah, who had a stillborn child at 31 weeks. She had a uterus rupture. I'm traveling with someone who had uterine cancer. They need this help. And she's saying it's prostitution. Like, it's just rich women who don't feel like being pregnant. It's really bizarre. And the other
so
part
dismissive.
It's so dismissive. And I'm traveling there with the one who's organizing it is actually the Family Equality Council, which really fights for LGBT rights. So we're kind of, marrying, so to speak, the LGBT rights with the medical, those of us with the medical issue, to say anyone who wants to build their family, women choosing, should have that right. And no one's forced into it. And it's so hard to do it. No one would just do it. And one thing that she said, which actually did a disservice to the African American community, is that women of color were doing it. And in fact, I have friends. One of my friends runs an egg donation surrogacy agency in Atlanta. They need more African-American egg donors and surrogates. African-American women have higher rates of infertility. It's a way underreported story. And they need more African-American egg donors and surrogates, because if you're a Black woman, you may not want a white woman carrying or as an egg donor. So in general, there's a lot of misinformation. And I believe people have a right to opinions, but I just don't like fake facts. It's like no one's forced into this. So in the end, my first cousin Alana, saved the day after 2 surrogates dropped out on us over 2 years and said, I cannot watch you and Michael go through anything else. And she never expected to offer to carry, and she carried and delivered my baby in December 2018.
That's amazing.
So it's just over a year now, and I'm like every day pinching myself. Yeah.
So you have turned a journalism career into a business and a media platform, and now you've evolved into a patient advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And you are really, as you said, you're getting out there. You're going to Albany and New York, which, by the way, is the weird. I've gone to lobby days. It is like this weird dystopian architecture.
Bizarre. My gosh, it might feel like The Handmaid's Tale is maybe what you're saying. Yeah, I'm just really thrilled to be able to lend my voice as someone who literally wouldn't have my baby without it. And I don't mind, I'm generally a polite person, but this really gets as you can tell,
Yeah.
Well, so I am a patient advocate now, and not just for surrogacy, for this category in general, but
right.
yeah.
And so there's a couple of big announcements, right? Mm-hmm. This show is coming out early February. So what's happening besides this trip to Albany?
Thank you. Well, another thing I'm really excited about is something called pregnantishverified.com. My site is pregnantish.com with the storytelling, but if you go to pregnantishverified.com, you will see this patient advocacy program I've put together what happened was I kept hearing that retention was an issue from healthcare providers, that people would jump off treatment. And patients would sometimes tell me their pain points that weren't so pretty. You know, they're going to clinics, even if they loved their doctors, billing made mistakes or the clinics were overcrowded. They felt like just a number. And I just felt like as a patient advocate, I wanted to get deeper insights. So we set up a survey called Why I Left My Fertility Clinic, and we got almost 1,100 responses in less than 3 months. And no one was paid to do the survey. And I realized, wow, this is like, and again, these are millennial patients, average age 33. And I thought, wow, like I have the voice of today's patient. They're only sharing it with me, so I'll share it with healthcare providers. So I applied for grants through EMD Serono and Cooper Surgical to support this patient-provider relationship. Again, it's a relationship program with the real talk about what we need when we're going through treatment, because it's such a difficult process. And I just finished writing about a 40-page report, which took over my life. I hired, data scientists to help me, because I've never done a research paper like this. I've been an author for years, but this was like great data.
It's like you got your doctorate all of a sudden.
I felt like it. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I definitely, it was like a lot of work, labor intensive. See, there are a lot of puns in this category. And once it's now published, actually by the time your show airs very soon, I think it's going to be up there. But I did it in consultation with a great advisory board of doctors, reproductive doctors, because I know enough not to just write, oh, these are what patients think, without getting doctor input. And because of the support we had from our sponsors of the survey, I'm able now to put this out more publicly. It's going to go to 1,600 healthcare providers in 2020. And I'm really trying to improve the patient-provider relationship in this category of infertility, and maybe beyond later. But for now, I'm so proud of everyone who participated in the survey. We have a blogger network called Pregnantish Verified. They help push out the survey. We're doing videos and media appearances, and this is a real big program for this new year. So thank you for asking me, because I really feel like that was my patient advocacy at work.
Yeah.
I just am so honored to be able to share the voices. So many patients with deep pain points.
Right. Mm-hmm. So this is my final question for you.
Okay.
What advice can you give to women out there, anyone out there who's going through what you went through over those years, while also trying to, be a creative professional while going through this deeply personal, deeply physical, emotional process? You were able to, keep on keeping on. What can you offer them in terms of advice or inspiration?
I always say that what really helped me in the final years of this craziness was holding on to the belief, the true in my gut. Like, I wasn't just trying to convince myself. I knew I would be a parent. I just didn't know how I would be a parent. And that was a game changer, because I said, I don't need to know the when, the how, the who, the where. I just need to know the what. I will be a parent, and I need to be open to all the paths. It may not be my egg. It may not be my uterus. It may not be my biology. Like, I have no idea how I will become a parent, but I will be a parent. And in the end, it wasn't my uterus. But that really helped me. And that's the advice I'd share with anyone listening who's struggling to conceive, because it's beautiful. And by the way, I want to just add, I don't believe, if you're on this treadmill and you say, I can't do it anymore, I don't think you're failing. I don't think that means you gave up on a dream. I mean, for some people, resolution is living child free. And it wasn't their first choice, but they really found beauty in that and resolution. And I don't want to leave those people behind. But for those who are determined to be a mom or dad, you will. It just might not come. It's the ish of life. Like, it may not be linear, but life is not linear. It may happen in a way you never imagined. And there are gifts in that. That you don't know yet. I'm sure of it.
Andrea Syrtash, thank you so much for being here on Her Rules Radio. You also have a podcast called Pregnantish on Stitcher. People can go find it.
Thank you.
People can follow you at Pregnantish on Instagram. And best of luck with your huge research project and your advocacy that's happening. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening in on Her Rules Radio. Today we've got more amazing interviews coming up, a whole slew of incredible interviews. And if you want to be amongst the first to check out these 3 spring retreats, I'll be leading a virtual retreat, a 1-day retreat in New York City, and a 3-day luxury retreat in Las Vegas this spring. Go to bit.ly/spring events 2020. bit.ly/spring events 2020. I hope to see you soon. And if you're not hanging out with me on Instagram, come on over to @deliciousalex. Thanks for being here. See you next week. Mwah!